Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amy Myers, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this webinar, Supporting Student Success with Interim Assessments and Tools for Teachers, brought to you by the California Department of Education. So with that, we will pass it over to our presenters for today. So please give them a warm welcome, and I'm going to turn it over to Tammy Saldana first. Tammy?
Thank you, Amy. My name is Tammy Saldana, and I am from the California Department of Education, and I am excited to be with you here today to hear from California educators as they share how they use some of the resources that are available from the state in their own districts and classrooms. Presenting today are Kelly Pereira, principal from Elmer Wood Elementary School in Atwater Elementary School District. And with her is Heather Arnold, a fourth grade teacher from Elmer Wood Elementary School in Atwater Elementary School District. And then Tamara Brown is also here today presenting, and she is a principal of Davidson Elementary School in San Bernardino City Unified School District. I'll quickly go over our agenda for today. Kelly is going to start our webinar sharing how Atwater Elementary School District is using the interim assessments, aligning them to the essential standards. Then Heather will share how teachers in Atwater are analyzing those interim assessments, the data, to identify how to support students in the classroom. And Tamara will talk about how interim assessment blocks connect to groups of instructional resources called Interim Assessment Connections playlists, available in the website Tools for Teachers. We will wrap up this 1-hour webinar with questions and answers. So be sure to submit any questions you have through the Zoom questions and answers feature at any time, and we will answer your questions during our Q&A time at the end of this webinar. Don't forget, there's a link in the chat for accessing today's presentation slides and the resource guide. That resource guide has links to the resources our presenters will be talking about today. And before I turn it over to our presenters, I'm going to quickly go over some words that might be good to know for a bit of background knowledge. First, you'll hear our presenters talk about IABs and FIABs. These are interim assessment blocks and focused interim assessment blocks. These are smarter balanced interim assessments that are available right now for ELA, English Language Arts and Literacy, and mathematics to students in grades 3 through 8 in high school. They're optional assessments that can be used free of charge, and they're available to all California local educational agencies. There is a longer full-form interim assessment available, but today's webinar is going to focus on these two types of interims, the IABs and the FIABs. Now, IABs focus on specific topics. They can usually be administered in one class period and include about 4 through 18 items, depending on the grade and the content area. Now, focused IABs generally have the same amount of questions as the IABs and are designed to measure smaller bundles of content to give teachers a better understanding of students' knowledge and academic performance. You will also hear about CERS. This is the California Educator Reporting System. CERS is a website where California educators can go to see their interim assessment results and other assessment results after they have been scored. The California Department of Education, CDE, provides in-depth training on interim assessments and CERS. So we have provided a link to the upcoming training and opportunities page on CAASPP.org in your resource guide. Today, our webinar focus is on how the IABs and focused IABs connect to Tools for Teachers resources. And with that, I'll hand it off to our first presenter. Go ahead, Kelly.
Thank you, Tammy. My name is Kelly Pereira. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Curriculum and Instruction for the Atwater Elementary School District in Atwater, California. Our district is a wonderful district of approximately 5,000 students in the heart of the Central Valley. Atwater Elementary School District is made up of 8 total schools. We serve TK through grade 8 students. Our demographics include about 28% of our population being English language learners. We have 12 to 13% of our students being special education students, and our student population is approximately 80% socioeconomically disadvantaged. I'm very excited to be here with you today and to be able to share our journey of how we got started in supporting our students through the use of the interim assessment system and associated resources. So our journey started in using the interim assessment system, and specifically the IABs and the FIABs, by determining the essential standards that had to be mastered at each grade level. So this allowed teams, grade level teams, to come to consensus on what standards should be must-know standards, as opposed to our nice-to-know standards that were more supporting in nature. Once we had confirmed our essential standards, instructional maps were then generated to reflect this essential standards focus. So with the essential standards and instructional maps as our guides, our grade level teams were asked to analyze existing IABs and FIABs for alignment with chosen essential standards. This process included printing literal hard copies of each of the available IAB and FIAB options in both math and ELA for review, and then directly correlating the number of items that specifically address the targeted essential standard. Chosen IABs and FIABs were embedded into the instructional maps for each grade level. Atwater Elementary engages in a formative assessment cycle for each essential standard. This cycle consists of high-quality first instruction of the essential standard, and then assessing all students with what we term as Test A. Results are analyzed within the CERS system, and all students that performed within the below standard range are provided with strategic intervention plan to include targeted interventions and reteaching. Within the CERS system, there is a resources button that links directly to lesson plans for reteaching sessions. And later in today's presentation, Tamara Brown will speak in much greater detail about these playlists of lesson plans. And in fact, Heather Arnold, who will be speaking with you in just a moment as well. And I just recently reviewed a 4th grade lesson that was sent out as February's featured resource and tools for teachers titled Place Value Rumble. And that was a lesson that we found to be a resource worth sharing with all of our 4th grade teachers throughout the district. So after we have done our interventions and reteaching, provided to all of the students that performed within that below standard range and that required intervention, participating students are then retested. And those results are considered Test B results. I have attached a sample progress monitoring tool that AESD utilizes to record student results and measure student progress as part of the formative assessment cycle within the resources guide for those of you that may want to see how we gather and store this data. This next slide that you're seeing now is appropriately titled Situated Cognition. AESD utilized a variety of different assessment tools and platforms prior to determining that the use of the IABs and FIABs were the best fit for our student population. This collective decision to commit to the IAB and FIAB use came from the concept of and our experiences with situated cognition. Situated cognition in the assessment context is the theory that students must be immersed in and active within the assessment environment, in which most closely replicates the actual assessment they'll eventually experience. Thus, IABs and FIAB use is the best practice for our students to prepare them for the experiences to come with the summative assessment process. When students are familiar with the structures that they're using, they're in a situation where they can show what they know and not struggle with the actual testing platform or spend mental energy on navigating through the testing platform. The interim IABs and FIABs mirror that testing platform that will be utilized for the end of the year summative assessment. And by using the interim assessments on a routine basis, students gain familiarity with the platform, with accessibility tools and supports, the language used in the assessment, and various question types that they may encounter. Over the next several slides, I will further detail how our district uses interim assessment results to support our students. At the district level, results of our assessments are analyzed, and the assessment data is collected and then organized for our site leadership. Results are provided to sites based on overall site and grade level specific performance with a comparison to prior school years, as well as in teacher level results. The intention of sharing this district level data to support our site administrators, it is to drive instruction and intervention. This process is completely formative in nature, thus all the results are analyzed only through the lens of teaching and learning. Overall site performance results are presented with a display value of a percentage of students performing in the above standard, the near standard, and below standard performance band. In our district, action plans are required for all students that performed in the below standard performance band. Students who demonstrated above level performance are able to move on to extension or challenge level tasks during times of differentiated instruction, which are embedded into each of our school days. And additional action plans are created for those students who performed within the near standard range as per teacher determination. So teachers utilize multiple data points to include classroom observation and work samples in conjunction with this interim assessment performance in order to determine if an additional support is needed for the students that fall within this near standard range. This slide shows an example of an interim assessment result shown within the California Educator Reporting System, or CERS. It shows overall site results and student score distribution per band. CERS displays the grade level and the name of the assessment. In this sample case, students took the grade 3 Read Informational Text IAB. Results provide the average scale score and the number of results. Here you can see that it's 99, or the number of students who took the assessment, as well as the student score distribution in a bar graph form with the percent of students performing above, near standard, and below standard. Our district retains these results from year to year to allow for that comparison lens of how a grade level or group of students performed this year as compared to years in the past. The additional lens in which data is viewed for our district is that of teacher level results. Analysis of the teacher at the teacher level is imperative to our professional learning communities, or PLC teams, both in terms of reteaching and in terms of our intervention response. Our district incorporates a focus on formative data provided by our interim assessment results within our PLC time as teachers collaborate and come together to analyze their results in terms of how many students will need or require intervention, but also in terms of what methods or strategies, and even which teacher from the PLC team might be best suited to deliver the required intervention for a particular essential standard assessment. And to better explain the teacher level data, we're going to go live into the CERS sandbox. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen with you guys. Hopefully this will go smoothly. Is that correct now? Can you guys see the CAASPP website? All right. So from here, what we will do is we're going to, you just go to CAASPP.org And once you're there, you're going to select the icon for the California Educator Reporting System, or CERS. And from here, you can have two choices. California Educator Reporting System, you can go into the actual database, or you can click on the Sandbox Training tool. We will be clicking on the Sandbox Training tool. Now that we've entered the sandbox, I am going to enter as a school administrator for Sample Elementary School. And here we go. Give it just a second to catch up to us. All right. And once you're here, so you can see that you're going to access assessment results in various ways. So you can search by student here, you can search by school, and you can search by assigned groups. In our district, we actually have a group for every teacher. So we're able to just go search a certain assessment by teacher by clicking on that teacher's name within the group. So for the purpose of this demonstration, we're actually going to go back to Sample Elementary School grade 3. And once I click on there, you're going to see the grade 3 CSA summative. Well, if you recall from earlier in the presentation, we were working with grade 3 read informational text. So to toggle to that different assessment or a new assessment, I'm simply going to come up and click on select assessment, find the assessment that I'm looking for, grade 3 ELA read informational text. I'm going to unhighlight the CSA summative, and then I have my grade 3 read informational text going. So I'm actually going to highlight each of the different sets of results. And now you can see the data displayed, again, will be organized by average scale score. In this case, it's 2390. And the number of results, we had 51 students take this test, as well as the score distribution on this bar graph performance by performance band here. So instead of leaving it as percentage, I'm going to toggle to display value as a number, because this, once it's viewed as a number, this will help our teachers to see how many students are performing in each of the various performance bands. So as you can see in this example, there's 13 students who performed above standard, 23 students who performed near standard, and 15 students who performed below standard. And again, in our district, teacher teams would be determining the strategic intervention plan for all 15 of the students performing in the below standard range, as well as teacher determination for any of the 23 students that performed within the near standard range. And they would do this during their PLC time. So now to dive deeper into the teacher level results and get to the real meat of things and associated action plans, I am pleased to introduce Heather Arnold, 4th grade teacher with the Atwater Elementary School District.
Hey, Kelly.
Thank you, Kelly. Oh.
Can I interrupt really quickly, Heather? I'm going to interrupt. Sure. Just that we have a quick question, and I think it's a burning question. So I'm going to interrupt just to show that we are responsive to our questions here. So it says, why are the results for IABs and FIABs, the focused IABs, why are they measured as above, near, and below? Why is there no at grade level? That's a really good question that I think we should just stop real quick and answer. So remember that I said that the IABs and focused IABs can have anywhere between 4 and 18 questions in them. And so when you look at a small assessment that's very focused on small content, we have to look at validity. When we provide results, we want to make sure that we're providing results where if they take the assessment again, are they more than likely to have the same achievement level or the same results. So when it comes to validity, and I'm not a metrics person or a psychometrics person, but this is my wording as a former teacher and principal. Basically it means that because we have a smaller assessment, we have to use broader categories. So the near is somewhere near grade level, right? Because of the smaller amount of questions that were used to assess a smaller amount of content. So I apologize for the interruption, and I'll turn it back over to you, Heather. Thank you.
All right, so thank you, Kelly. My name is Heather Arnold, and I am a 4th grade teacher. I have the pleasure of sharing with you how I view the interim assessment results to look for places I can provide my students with intervention based on data and the standards assessed by an IAB. Teacher level analysis is conducted with 3 foci based upon the results views available in the CERS system: results by student, reporting category, results by item, and key distractor analysis. Kelly was showing how results show in CERS. First, when I go to CERS as a teacher, I can select the results view of results by student. This view allows for teachers to analyze the overall performance of their class. In this view, teachers are able to see the names of each student that fell into each performance band. Also, I can click on the Reporting Category tab to organize students according to either above standard or below standard for the purposes of PLC discussions. First, teachers select the results view of results by student. This view allows for teachers to analyze the overall performance of their class. In this view, teachers are able to check the names of each student that fell in each performance band. Teachers select on the Reporting Category tab to organize their students according to either above standard or below standard for the purposes of the PLC discussions. During PLC grade level discussions, we will focus on how our class performed as a whole, break down how many students we have in each category: above standard, met, nearly met, and below standard. We will discuss any trends that we may see, any surprises as to where students scored. We can dig deeper to investigate any surprise findings. For example, a student that scored lower than we may have expected, or vice versa, a student that may have scored higher than we expected. The second focus for teacher level analysis is to understand the data using results by item full credit. In CERS, there is another type of view I can use as a teacher. I can move into analysis of the results by item. This view allows for teachers to begin determining and recording trends. In AESD, we use the full credit toggle to determine which items students experience the greatest difficulty. Teacher teams use this data in several ways. Now, we are going to dig a little deeper into how to use the results by item. Today, we focus on our example, which is item number 10, with a claim of reading informational text and target 11. And this is shown to be a difficult item. First, teachers examine the number of students in their classrooms that got the item correct and the number of students that got the item incorrect in order to determine if a whole class action plan is needed or if small group instruction might be more appropriate. In our example, 58 students got full credit and 41 got the item incorrect. If small group instruction is determined to be the most appropriate form of intervention, teachers click on the item number and the Student Points and Responses tab to view individual student results for that item. Our example is showing 3 students that got 0 out of 1 max point for this item. Teachers then use the Student Points toggle to create their list of students' names that require support with this item type. Teachers can continue to dig more deeply into trend and pattern identification in this view by selecting the name of each student to see exactly how the student responded by expanding the student row to view their response. If students all had a similar error pattern, teachers are able to directly address that common misconception within the small group intervention. While planning intervention, teachers may utilize the lesson plans designed for specific IAB content available by selecting the Instructional Resources button. Now we are going to talk about what we find by looking at the items. If whole group intervention or reteaching is determined to be the most appropriate action plan, teacher teams again select the item number and then use the item viewer and the item information tabs to view the exact question and question type associated with this target area. For example, last school year, I noticed a trend that for questions that contained two parts, Part A and Part B, my students were able to identify the correct answer for Part A, but were choosing an incorrect response for Part B. My team and I noticed that Part B answers usually require students to identify textual evidence that supports their Part A answer. Now that we had this information, we were able to gather resources that specifically target this skill. We were also able to practice this skill more during language arts instruction by having students go back and cite textual evidence to support their answer to comprehension questions. Teacher teams use this information to determine the next steps for whole group reteaching. These next steps often include using both the sample items website, which is the Tools for Teachers website, on the sample icon, or using the interim assessment item portal, which can also be accessed within the Tools for Teachers website. The interim assessment item portal provides easy access for teachers to either project items electronically to their whole class or print a quick PDF version of the items for practice purposes. The sample items website allows for teachers to use the item information found within the CERS system to quickly find additional assessment items that are similar to the item in which students experienced difficulty. I have found during this type of instruction, many times students understand the content being assessed, but have difficulty with the assessment wording or directions. There are many aha moments had by students while taking the time to deep dive into particular test questions. Lastly, for teacher level analysis, we will discuss the key distractor analysis, the final view that teachers utilize to support instruction and intervention planning is that of the key distractor analysis. This view allows teachers to determine if there is a common distractor or possible misconception that needs to be addressed within any of the multiple choice question types on any particular assessment. For example, on item 6 of this assessment, measuring the claim reading literary text with a target 5, 65 students correctly identified option C as the correct answer. However, students were more distracted by both answer options A and B, with 10 and 12 students choosing those, as opposed to answer option D that only 5 students chose. This item would be appropriate for reteaching in a test protocol format in which students are required to participate in a partner share activity in which they explain why answer option C is the most correct and why both A and B are incorrect. Key distractor analysis can be very powerful for students. In the past, once I have identified a question that needs to be addressed whole class, we'll pull apart the question and answers, focusing on why the correct answer is correct, but more importantly, why the distractor answers are wrong. I have found that many times students do not read all the choices before choosing an answer. We talk about not falling for the tricks and slowly going through the answer choices to make sure we are confident in the answer we are choosing. We also practice using the strikeout tool to visually get rid of answers that we know are incorrect. Students become more confident in their ability to use the tools available to them during testing and feel better equipped when taking the summative CAASPP assessment at the end of the school year. The key distractor for interim assessments helps teachers analyze results and find misconceptions or areas of instructional need. IABs and FIABs help to give teachers specific information they need. So let's transition to the instructional aspect. Now that a teacher has information about what their students need, there are links to lesson plans, and as was mentioned earlier, Tamara Brown is here to share with us about the instructional resources that are connected to IAB and FIAB content. So I will turn the presentation over to Tamara.
Thank you so much, Heather. My name is Tamara, and I am a principal at one of 50 elementary schools in the San Bernardino City Unified School District. I am very excited to share with you how we implement the Smarter Balance Interim Assessment Connections playlist. Today, I will discuss the journey of how our district got started in supporting our students through the use of the interim assessment system and the associated resources. Our district is a very large school district. In kindergarten through 12th grade, we serve 46,000 students. We have 72 total schools. 23% are English language learners, 15% are in special education, 86% are socioeconomically disadvantaged. During our time, I will present resources that are available in the Tools for Teachers website called Interim Assessment Connections Playlist. As Heather and Kelly just talked about, the specific playlists of lesson plans are designed with specific IABs and FIAB content in mind and are linked to the Tools for Teachers in the blue Instructional Resources button in CERS. There are so many ways you can use Tools for Teachers to support student learning. So when logging in, it brings you to what's called the Quick Start page. Each of the 6 sections have quick guides to the teaching resources and strategies that include things such as the helpful instructional tips. You can also find professional learning videos. And what is great is you will find classroom lessons already available for you. In the San Bernardino City Unified School District, we are at the beginning stages of implementation. So we are currently focused on the first section titled the Connections Playlist. So it's highlighted there with the star. At my school site, we have spent professional learning time making sure teachers know they have access to this resource that has been developed and approved by educators. Interim assessment connections playlists are developed by groups of educators from the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium, including educators from California. These educators are trained to author these resources that embed the formative assessment process into instruction. So to create connection playlists, educators analyze the interim assessments to determine the topics and skills assessed by specific interim assessment blocks. Then they collaboratively author these groups of lesson plans to help teachers boost instruction and learning in the classroom, which is great because we know it's done collectively as a team, which is amazing. So in our district, we ensure teachers have access to the interim assessments and tools for teachers at the start of the school year. It's very important that teachers know how to find this amazing resource. Then we make sure teachers know how to locate the resources. This year, I have introduced to our professional learning community team the Connections playlist and gave them time to explore. So it's important teachers have time to explore these resources. And this can help to plan student learning around the interim assessments. In our district, there are suggested pacing guides for each grade level in kindergarten through 12th grade. And again, it's a team. So committees of teachers across the district have worked together to ensure we have a pacing guide and a unit plan that includes teacher voice. Each year, this committee comes together to give feedback in order to improve our pacing and our guides. In our pacing guides, teachers are provided a unit overview for each bundle of standards. And as a principal at Davidson, each teacher is given a copy of the pacing guide, and time is spent really digging deep and looking at the unit overviews throughout the school year. So always coming back to them, not just at the beginning of the year, but before each unit. So as we approach each unit in our curriculum guides, teachers also have the opportunity, again, to look at the Interim Connections playlist to help them plan for instruction. The Interim Connections playlist have sections that help provide clarity before a unit is taught, during the instruction of a unit, and after students have been assessed. So they can be helpful before, pre-teaching, during, and then also after. By giving teachers time to explore the playlist, I have personally seen that the benefit and the clarity teachers gain about the skills and concepts, which ultimately supports instruction. I am going to share a downloaded copy of an Interim Connections playlist. It is also in your resource guide under the San Bernardino City Unified School District. And this is so you can follow along with the sections that I discuss. But please remember that when you access through Tools for Teachers, the links are available and the site is interactive, where you're now currently just looking at a PDF. As a district, we have focused on the work of John Haiti, who is a researcher in education. Within his work on the visible learning theory, our district's focus has been around teacher clarity. Teachers at my site use the Interim Connections playlist to support them with the clarity of a unit. So I remember attending a training and they said, you know, what's great about something if it's already done for you. So what's nice is this is already done for us and we have access to great work. So the IAB background section gives a description of the learning and explains what skills students are required to do. In the example of the playlist that you have, it tells teachers that students not only have to explain, but they also have to apply that math concept. In this section online, teachers can also view the interim items. The teachers at my school site like to view the items prior to planning for their instruction. The IAB background section also contains why the content is important for students to learn. This supports teachers in the development of learning intentions for students as they are planning. It is important for students to know what they are learning, but also to know why they are learning it. This section also provides the academic vocabulary to plan for during instruction. So it is important for students to become familiar with academic vocabulary so that students can access the language when they are taking an IAB or the FIAB. The final piece to this section allows teachers to dive deeper by looking at sample items. For math, our district provides teachers with the sample items on a Google slide deck in our unit overviews. So we just take those questions and put them through Google Slides. This way, teachers can adjust the numbers and still use the question types instructionally or the question stems during the unit of instruction. In our curriculum guides, the unit overview has an interim assessment connections section. This section contains information about IABs and FIABs, including the claims and the targets. This section is where district teachers find the interim assessments and the interim connections playlist that correlates to their unit plan. So for example, the unit overview shown on the slide correlates to the focus interim assessment block, properties of multiplication and division, claim 1, target B. So the interim connections playlist the teacher would access on Tools for Teachers would be the playlist that you are currently viewing. At my site, teachers have also been given the interim assessment schedule that gives them the week that correlates to the interim they should be given as a standardized assessment. After the interim assessment has been given, teachers are given then time in their PLCs to analyze results and group students by their performance level. I also hold trimester data meetings with teachers, and together as a team, we discuss student progress through the school year using the interims. In the San Bernardino City Unified School District, we are focused on our response to instruction and intervention, our RTI time. My school site has a schedule of block times for RTI by grade level. In addition, our scope and sequence has time allotted for teachers to reteach and enrich content for students. There are several sections in the Interim Connections playlist that support small group instruction for teachers. After a student takes an IAB or FIAB, students can be grouped by below, above, or near standard level, and teachers can adjust their small groups accordingly. The Interim Connections playlist provides supports for each group of students, which can be used during our reteach and enrichment block. The Interim Connections playlist has 3 sections that can support instruction for intervention. So I have showed that the teachers at my site this section because it can save time for teachers by using the resources that they already have available. At the top of the playlist, there is a section titled Connect Student Performance to Instructional Resources. This section identifies the progression of skills and concepts for each group of student. You can find the progression of skills for below, for near, and for above. This helps teachers plan next steps for instruction. In this section, I have also shown teachers the lessons that are available for each topic. These lessons they already have the learning goal and success criteria, so it's already there and done for you. The lessons also provide scaffolds for each group of students. In the suggestions for intervention section, a teacher will find ideas for helping meet students' needs for those that need the extra support or for intervention. Teachers can also search for additional resources for students who are significantly below and need additional support. There is also things to consider section in every Tools for Teachers resource, where the authors, which are educators, as I mentioned, have listed any tips, considerations, thoughts, or ideas that may help students to understand the concepts students are expected to learn. Teachers will also find descriptions of prior knowledge skills required. This can be very helpful, especially for teachers who are new to teaching. As my district and school site continue to progress in our journey, teachers will find that the Interim Assessment Connections playlist provide tools and lessons that are already complete and aligned for them, which will help save time and boost their instruction. Now we're going to take some time to answer your questions.
Thank you, Tamara. And thank you to all the presenters today. I've been looking at the questions that have been submitted, and before we go into our Q&A, I wanted to show you the key place to go, because we heard from presenters who are super users of IABs and FIABs, and they're talking about resources, and we have some people who might be at the beginning of this journey. And where do you begin? And so really quickly, before we ask our detailed questions, I'm going to share my screen and show you where to begin. So CAASPP.org. When I was a teacher, I didn't go to CAASPP.org until summative testing, that end of the year test, right? Little did I know that here on CAASPP.org are all of these resources that are available to me. And I hear a lot of questions about, how do I begin interims? How do I find an interim? How do I administer an interim? We have trainings all throughout the year, and there's this wonderful training tab here that has upcoming training opportunities. And also check out the past training opportunities and materials. And there's great places where we've had training for interims. We have the interim informative assessment trainings every year, where they take teachers through how to use the interims, how to hand score the interims, where to go. And then right here on CAASPP.org are all the links. We have the link to the reporting system. We have the link to the tools for teachers, and we have a link to the interim assessments. And don't be afraid to click on these links, because you don't go into some place where you're going to mess something up. You go to places where there's resources. So the interim assessments link has all of these resources, and down here are all of these links to videos, instructions, training videos, flyers about interim assessments. It's pretty amazing. We've tried to, I know it's a lot, but if you're really interested in getting started, here's where you're going to find your resources. And I think the key here is you don't have to start big. You can start small. And I wanted to really quickly find for you the link to the playlist that I have. I have a playlist, and I'm not sure where it's showing up here. Let me find it. There's a playlist of these Tools for Teachers Shared Practices webinars that we've had in the past, and I am going to link it in the chat here before we go into, and there is even a teacher that shared last year. How do I get back to chat? Here's my playlist, paste, send. There was a teacher who just started on his own. He found an interim assessment, one interim assessment, and he administered it. He used it as a pre-test and a post-test in his own classroom for math. His name was Matthew Fredericks, and he was part of our shared practices. So just administering just one interim assessment. It doesn't have to be school-wide. It doesn't have to be district-wide. We have some amazing presenters today who have coordinated district level and school-wide things, but it doesn't necessarily have to be this huge, complicated thing. So we're here to support you. We have ways to get you and your students all the resources you need, right? That's why we're here, and we are wanting to just create awareness that we have these resources available, and we have, it's like we have the summative assessments, the interim assessments, and then we have these lesson plans and tools for teachers that can target specific areas. So let's go into our Q&A. I hope that helped a little bit. Let's take a look at, some people were talking about how can you go back and share things and show us how to do this. Unfortunately, this is just an hour webinar. And like I told you, there's a series of interim informative assessments training. And so in an hour, we can't possibly show you everything there is about interim assessments and everything there is about the California Educators reporting system. But if we've done anything today, hopefully we've created within you an awareness that these resources are available and they are working well for some of our presenters here. And that's why they wanted to share with you what they're doing today. All right, another question. Let's take a look at another question. Let's ask Heather. Heather, can you tell us if you have students that perform at the near category in your IABs, when you're looking at the data, do you give them intervention because they might be meeting the standard? How do you guys address the near category?
So looking at how students have been performing in class, looking at other assessments to see if I would think, is it a student that needs intervention, or is it a student that maybe scored on, we'll also look at the scale scores to see where they scored in that band. So if they were up higher in that band, they may not need intervention. If they just barely made it into that band, that may be a student that will require some reteaching.
And Kelly, can you tell us, has your district seen growth from using the IABs and focused IABs? If so, did you have a way of measuring it? So you know, what are your thoughts on how your district is doing with this?
Right. Yes, we have seen growth, and Mrs. Arnold could testify to, we measure everything at Atwater Elementary. We have tons of data. But really, we're of course looking at progress over time and how does the use of the IABs and the FIABs translate into our summative results, and are we seeing growth year after year in the summative?
So can you help me locate the learning progressions that relate to the interim assessments? That's within Tools for Teachers. On the Tools for Teachers landing page, I'm going to show you really quick because I like to show people. So here's my landing page. And when I scroll down, I can see these tiles. These tiles tell me they have the playlist right there. These are groups of lesson plans that are tied to interim assessments. I have a link to all the lesson plans, the strategies that are embedded, professional learning, and the interim items portal. So, and within these connections playlist, you're going to see there's a link to that sample. Someone else asked about the link to the sample items website. The sample items website, in fact, is a public website. So I'm going to click on a playlist. I'm not logged in, but I'm not going to take the time to log in. But within, see if I can do it quickly. There's a link to the sample items. Everyone has access to Tools for Teachers using their district email. So because we're a part of the Smarter Balanced Assessment Consortium, we have access to these resources, including, there it is, sample items website. And this is what our presenters went over, this whole playlist. And here are the student performance progressions within a playlist. And here's where I can view the interim items. If my district is giving me access to interims to administer them, I can see the actual items. And you can also see the actual items within the California reporting system. Okay, we have a question for Kelly. How long has your district been using IABs and FIABs?
I would say we probably transitioned to this 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay. Can you repeat how to get to the sample items? Ooh, I just did that. Can you help me locate the learning progressions? I'm hitting done. What does full credit mean? I'm not sure what that means, but I'm thinking that if there's a two-part question within the California Educator Reporting System, CERS, there's, something might be worth 1 or 2 points or something like that. I think that's what that question is referring to. And then we have, within a single school, to analyze IAB data, is it possible to create groups for teachers ahead of time? Yes. So the way that the California Educator Reporting System works is that districts go in and they load the students and they assign a teacher. So when a teacher goes in, they see their student results. So say, for instance, I teach several periods of classes, I can have several groups within CERS that my district has set up. So yes, within a single school, I can look at different groups of students that have been assigned to me as a teacher. Okay, we have 3 minutes left. I want to check in with our presenters and see if there's anything they'd like to add really quickly. I'll start with Kelly. Is there anything that you were thinking about that you might want to add before we go?
I just wanted to add that we did share lots of our resources. I did see something in the question and answer about sample action plans. We shared a lot of those in the resource guides, just how we break down some of the questions within the IABs and decide, are we doing small group, are we doing whole group? So some of those templates are in there for you, as well as there's a sample test protocol process. So if you wanted to see how we take our students through the test protocol practice that Mrs. Arnold was talking about, we kind of wrote that down for you, what that looks like.
Thank you. Heather, is there anything that comes to mind?
I would just add that the time spent doing this is really helpful for students. That situated cognition makes a difference. Just knowing how to log in and being familiar with the way that the websites are laid out and the tools available to them takes some of that anxiety off of when you get to that summative assessment.
Right. And Tamara, any final thoughts?
Yes, I just think that be sure to go out and explore the tools for teachers. There's lots of great resources in there. So I know sometimes it can be, you want to make sure you're not clicking on anything that's not correct, but remember, green means go. So I think it would be very valuable just to get in there and not be afraid to explore, because there are so many helpful resources.
Thank you. I remember when I was a teacher, I was exploring Teachers Pay Teachers, and think about how huge that is, and people are scrolling through it, and you don't have reassurance that they're based in the standards, that it's rigorous, that it's quality instruction, that, you know, it's really going to get your students prepared for college and career readiness. And here's a site that you know is grounded in what students need to know to be successful. So it saves teachers time. And so we encourage you to explore and check out the YouTube playlist of other categories. We talked about English learners using tools for teachers. We've had coordinators talk about how they structure things. We've had, like I said, a beginning teacher who was just starting out, figuring things out. So we have quite a collection of people that have been willing to come in and share how they're using tools for teachers resources, and it's pretty exciting. So thank you for coming today. We appreciate you being here, and we appreciate our presenters. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Amy.
Thank you all for your wonderful presentations today, and thank you for all of you who attended with us today. We know you have a lot of places that you would like to be on the Tuesday after a holiday, so we appreciate you being here with us. And that brings us to the end of our meeting, so we hope that you got some great ideas and tips today. If you have any remaining questions about tools for teachers or interim assessments, please feel free to reach out to caaspp@cde.ca.gov. Thank you and have a wonderful day and a wonderful rest of your week. Bye-bye, everyone.